Can you deconstruct religion as a theist? No, not really, but there are lots of former theists who do it pretty badly too, so I don't really know how much we can complain. Today, we're going to give it a shot, at least of a sort, as we watch a theist try to deconstruct deconstruction, and we find that all of them are doing intelligence wrong. Stick around. Something amazing is going to be happening today. I'm actually going to agree with Tim Barnett on something. Now, don't panic because I'm also going to disagree with him. Don't worry, it'll all make sense in a minute. He's great at criticizing the splinter in the eyes of others while ignoring the log in his own, mostly because I don't think he actually cares. I can't remember the last theist who did. They just really want to believe and have faith, and both are stupid, and they just can't get past it, so we get religion. And that is not something to be proud of. So let's get to it.
A defining feature of deconstruction is that there's no right way to do it, and there's no right destination.
I guess? I mean, I'm not really a big fan of deconstructionism myself, as a lot of people use it. Now, what I see a lot of people doing is saying, well, let's take apart what I believe and see what I think about it. Well, it doesn't really matter what you think, does it? It doesn't matter what you like. This is the same mistake that you made being religious in the first place. You used your emotions as a gauge of what you were going to believe. Taking it all apart and using the same methodology, that's not learning any lessons, is it? It's not making it better. It's just having a new outlook and making the same mistakes all over again. And that's why I don't really recommend it. You need to fundamentally understand what is going on in the real world. It doesn't matter how you feel, and that's something a lot of people just don't want to face. You are not that important. If your goal is to understand reality as best as you can, and I think that's really the only worthwhile goal out there, then you need to take yourself completely out of the picture. If the speed of light in a vacuum is 186,282 miles a second, and that's what it is, then no matter how you feel about it, that's what it is. If you really hate the idea, as silly as that sounds, but if you really hate the idea, if it makes you feel absolutely miserable that it isn't a nice round, 100,000 miles per second, too bad. You don't matter. It is what it is. You have to learn how to deal with it. But that's a lot of jabbering for 5 seconds of his video, so let's get back to it.
For example, listen to Jo Luhmann expound on this idea in her video titled Our Journey of Faith Deconstruction.
And this is the thing with deconstruction that I really think it's important to understand. Everyone lands wherever they land. Right. There is no right place to land with deconstruction.
And that's really the problem that I have with it. Now, sure, that could be true if you did care about the actual state of reality. If you did wind up in some places and not others that had nothing at all to do with how the world actually works. All of this is out of context, of course, and I have no real interest in going and watching yet another video just to see how they're looking at things. Yet, we do this all the time, where people will say, but I want to believe that morality is objective, or I want to believe that the earth is flat, or whatever. Those are simply not defensible positions with the evidence that we have at hand, and the evidence needs to matter. But not having objective morals will make me feel really awful. That's irrelevant. Doesn't matter. It is what it is. How you feel about it means nothing because it is what it is. Nobody cares how you feel. It's up to you to deal with the reality in which you actually live, no matter how emotionally distraught you might get. The evidence matters. You do not. So let's see what they've got to say, and I may or may not agree, but it doesn't really matter, does it?
Some people land away from faith. Some people land in a different type of faith. Some people become agnostic. Some people become a different type of Christian. Some people become atheists. And all of those routes in deconstruction are valid and to be respected.
Nope, wrong, hard disagree. We all live in the same reality. At least that's what the evidence that we have tends to suggest. This really isn't the place to argue that at the moment. I'm just kind of throwing that out there. Therefore, if there is a God, then there is a God, and anyone who says there isn't, they would be, in that case, wrong. If there are no gods, then there are no gods, and anyone who says that there is, they're wrong. This isn't about go where you feel the best. It's go where the evidence leads. And I don't think, and this is just me, that there's really a lot of room for rational discussion there. I don't think that the evidence gets you anywhere close to there being any real gods. Now, I'm not saying that everyone has to automatically be an atheist, but as far as I'm concerned, after a solid evaluation of the evidence that we have, I don't really see it leading anywhere else. I have never seen a rational, justifiable case for any other conclusion to be defensible. Of course, that's where we can have discussions, so long as we leave faith and fifis behind. It's just that a lot of people don't want to do that, and that's where we tend to have problems, don't we?
Lumen is not alone. Naked Pastor David Hayward, who regularly creates social media content on faith deconstruction, put it more concisely.
Hey, there isn't a right way to deconstruct, nor is there a right destination. You do you.
And still wrong. You do reality whether you like it or not. This is a problem. No, that doesn't mean that you have to be an emotionalist drone, but you have to understand where you have options and where you don't. You can live however you'd like to live within the boundaries set by society and the law. I mean, really, go ahead, knock yourself out. But what you can't do is pretend that reality is different than what it actually is. That's what religion tries to do, saying, reality makes me sad, so I'm going to invent my own reality and pretend that's real instead. But that is utterly idiotic, but, tons of people do it, don't they? Even the non-religious do it. Just being an atheist doesn't make you a rational person. You are not important. That's something a lot of people just don't like. Yet reality doesn't ask if you like it. Metaphorically anyhow, since reality can't ask anything. It just is what it is. Deal with it. The amount of impact you have on reality is minuscule. The amount of impact that the whole of the human species has on reality is virtually non-existent. You live in this world whether you like it or not. You just need to learn to deal with it. Give it a shot.
Now, I want you to think about this. Why is there no right place to land in deconstruction? The answer is that deconstruction is a postmodern process. What I mean is deconstruction isn't about objective truth. It's about personal happiness and living your truth, whatever that may be.
Another case of being so close, but never being able to take that last step. That's all religion is, after all. They don't care about the actual truth of reality. They just really want to believe. Now, here's where I'm going to drift into politics for just a second, because if you blink, you just might miss it. But as I'm writing this, there's a recommended video that I watched a day or two ago on YouTube. I mean, honestly, YouTube, why do you keep recommending things to me that I've already seen? It's just dumb. But that aside, it's complaining about woke stuff, and then it recommends hardcore Christian stuff instead, where neither of them are demonstrably true. And yes, there are plenty of videos that go the other way. My way is right and everybody else is wrong. Things like that. How do you know that? These questions apply across the board, don't they? Now, how do you know that position X is true and position Y is false? Because you like it? No, that is not how that works. You do it because that's what the evidence supports. We see this all the time across the spectrum, right? Everybody wants everybody else to be just like they are, right? And I think we're all guilty of that to a certain degree. It's a whole lot easier if nobody ever disagrees with you, because then you don't have to defend yourself. Except you should be able to defend yourself rationally. All of us should. It just takes work, and most of the time humanity is inherently lazy. And that's not a good thing either.
In one sense, the destination of deconstruction is like the destination of a vacation. Whether you end up in Hawaii or Jamaica or someplace else, it's all a matter of personal preference. It would be silly for me to say that Hawaii is the right or correct vacation destination for everyone.
I mean, you do that for Christianity, right? But I guess we'll ignore that for the moment because here in this specific instance, I agree with him. This is why faith and fifis need to go by the wayside. They are great for some things, but not in determining what's actually going on in the singular reality that we all share. When it comes to religion, and to be honest, a lot of other things, how you feel is entirely irrelevant. Is there a God? Well, that's not a question for faith or your emotional state. That's a question about the fundamental reality that we live in. That's something you need to look for objective evidence for. A God exists or does not exist regardless of how you feel about it. Facts are real entirely without regard for your emotional state. People really need to figure that out. Yet Tim is just criticizing people who are leaving his faith without applying the same standards to the people who remain. I am applying the same standards to absolutely everyone because reality doesn't make exceptions. You don't get to decide the speed of light. It is what it is. You don't get to decide if there is a God. There either is one or there isn't. You don't matter. You have zero importance in the reality of the situation. Stop pretending that you do. Grow up.
Notice how deconstruction assumes that there's no objective truth when it comes to religious belief.
Notice how theists ignore objective truth when it comes to their own beliefs, right? Because if you ask Tim, since I know he's just sitting there, what's true, he's going to assert Christianity. If you ask a Muslim, they're going to assert Allah. If you ask a Hindu, they're going to assert Krishna or one of the other Hindu deities. These are all just assertions. They are not objective truths. I'm after the objective truth. I don't care about your assertions, not one bit. I care what you can back up with demonstrable evidence, and none of you are remotely interested in any of that. How do you get there in a way that shows me that you know what the hell you're talking about? They don't. They don't care. They don't even make a good faith effort. They just really wish it was true. Here's the biggest problem with Tim in this moment, and it's not just him, as we well know. He is doing the exact same thing that the deconstructionists are doing, picking and choosing things that sound good to him and pretending that somehow that makes it real. But it doesn't. We see this from the religious all the time, though, don't we? Christians are mad at Muslims, who are doing the same things that the Hindus are doing, who are doing the same things that the Jews are doing, who are doing the same things that the Christians were doing in the first place. This goes around and around and around, all doing the same thing and all getting upset at everyone else for doing the same thing, except themselves. And then when we point it out, they get mad at us. Funny how that works, isn't it?
That's why it doesn't matter how you do it or where you end up as long as you're happy. Now contrast this with Jesus' words in the Sermon on the Mount.
Fuck your stupid book, because I care no more what your mythology says than I do about those deconstructionists you had at the beginning who are just looking for emotional comfort. Just like you are, you know? My book says a thing means nothing until you can prove that your book is actually true. And you're not even trying to do that, are you? Faith and fifis, remember? So we'll let him get back to that, but it really doesn't matter. It's why he's just preaching to the choir, which, as we all know, is just a complete waste of time.
He says, enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life, and there are few who find it.
Yet that's exactly what you're doing, isn't it? Following all the rest of the lunatics who only care about their own feelings and reject the facts wholesale. The narrow path is the one that I followed, caring only about the real world and leaving my faith and fifis behind. You don't care about that at all. Most people don't. So are you all on the path to destruction? Let me see. Let's consult my magic 8-ball here. Shake, 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 shake. Yeah, signs point to yes.
I want you to notice two things. First, Jesus mentions two ways. There's a narrow way and a broad way, a right way and a wrong way.
That's what you want to believe. I don't personally care what it says in your stupid book. Now, as I said, you're doing it wrong. You are just following the crowd. You're just after what makes you personally happy. You are not following the actual truth, backed up with defensible evidence and critical evaluation. You just really want it to be true. Then you're just being critical of other people who are sadly doing the same thing because they're not coming to the same emotionally comforting conclusion that you are. Do you see where the problem is here, Tim? Probably not, because you get stuck in your own echo chamber and then lose the ability to think outside of it. You just really want it to be true, and that's never going to be a rational path to actual truth, will it? It just kind of makes you look silly. Knock it off.
Second, Jesus mentions two destinations. The right way leads to a good destination, life. The wrong way leads to a bad destination, what Jesus calls destruction.
It doesn't matter what your fantasy figure calls it, since you can't prove that Jesus ever existed at all. And certainly not that a real Jesus ever said that. This is just, my book says a thing. And I don't care what your book says. I care what you can demonstrate as actually true. Why don't you give that a shot? This is really why these discussions with the religious never go anywhere useful. I only care about the truth, no matter what it is. They only care about their faith and reject anything that disagrees with it. We are after two entirely different things. One is rational, the other is not. Guess which one is which?
According to Jesus, there is absolutely a right place to land, and Jesus tells us how to get there.
And if you listen to the Muslims, they have a right place to land, and they can tell you how they think they can get there. And the same goes for the Hindus, the same with the Buddhists, same with the Jews. Of course, each of them have lots of different sects with lots of different ideas on what their books and their teachings actually mean. Because in reality, they don't actually mean anything. They just make claims. They just say, here's what we like. Tim is only relating his own personal interpretation of a book that he happens to like because that's what he happens to like. You can get anywhere depending on where you start and depending on which parts you pay attention to. How is that supposed to be impressive? Please explain.
Well, I think Joe Luhmann and David Hayward both accurately describe deconstruction. They highlight one of the fundamental flaws in the process. If you want to know more about deconstruction, then pick up Elisa Childers and my new book, The Deconstruction of Christianity.
And I'm not at all surprised that he's out there trying to make a buck. But he is right there. Both of the videos earlier, the clips he provided anyhow, they do show that they're doing it wrong. Tim is still doing it wrong, and so is every other theist on the planet, because they're all ultimately doing the same thing. They're all looking for fifis, not facts. Faith, not objective reality. They don't care what's actually going on, only what makes them feel personally good. And that's not a worthwhile way to go through life. I don't think. And I don't think Tim cares either. He's just a con man like the rest, which is why he's writing books to sell to the gullible, and his channel is, of course, monetized. Whereas, mine isn't. Now, it could be. I could do that in a second. I could be subjecting everyone out there to ads, but I'm not. It's why I recommend ad blockers. Nobody owes anyone any money just because they make a thing. Now, it's why I don't push my Patreon very much. It's there if you want to, but if you don't, then don't. I'm not trying to push you to do something you don't want to do. You'll never see a little lion avatar holding up a book and saying, pay me. It doesn't work that way. Never has, never will. So, that aside, what did you think? Is this one more place where Tim gets so close and then just falls off a cliff because he can't apply his own criticisms to his own religious beliefs? Let me know what you think down in the comments. I thought this really was kind of stupid, but then again, this is Tim Barnett, and yeah, we don't need to say any more on that. I really wish I could find an intelligent theist anywhere who didn't run around with the goalposts, didn't engage in double standards, and most importantly, didn't pretend like faith meant anything. As far as I have ever seen, those kinds of people, they do not exist. Probably anyone who started off like that, they didn't stay a theist for long, which I suppose is a good thing. The fewer theists we have to deal with, the better. Unfortunately, the ones that remain are always the ones with no brains. And maybe that's why all the ones we look at here on the channel are so stupid. What do you think? Let me know.